November 26, 2009 meeting of Planning and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Esposito? Here. Mr. Gamina? Here. Mr. Hanna? Here. Mr. McCann? Here. Chairman Tucciarello?
Here. Is there anyone present to sign up to speak in front of this committee?
We have one public forum speaker. Would Jason Lustig please come forward and address the committee?
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Jason Lustig, and I'm with Easter Seals, New York. I'm here to support the ability of the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation to issue tax-exempt bonds to nonprofit organizations. As some of you may know, Easter Seals, New York provides services to people with disabilities and special needs. Typically, we serve those for whom no other services exist, with services that are often novel and unique in their area. Along those lines, there are more than 3,000 children and adolescents in New York State who are dual diagnosed with mental retardation, developmental disabilities, and a mental illness. Given the way the systems in the state work, the services that are available to these children are often not offered at the same time in the same location. There are no facilities available that have adequate services that support both sides of treatment that these children need. We are working with the town of Irondequoit to create a residential school facility, the first of its kind in New York State, what will ultimately be a game changer in these children's lives. We've had amazing outpouring of support from the community and from the town and from St. Margaret Mary's, the parish whom we are buying some buildings and land from to open this facility. With tax-exempt bonds offered by Monroe County, we will be able to save an enormous amount of interest over taking out bank loans. It's essentially the difference between offering the full and complete services to these children at this facility and having to spend more of our operational dollars paying back interest. With the tax-exempt bond, we offer the full services. Without it, we have to cut back services yet again to children who need services the most. So thank you for your time, and really, I hope you support offering these tax-exempt bonds to nonprofits. It truly makes a difference in the lives of countless people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone present that is not signed up that would like to address this committee at this time? Having no one, I would like to introduce Susan Walsh, Director of the Office of Management and Budget, who is here this evening to present the 2010 proposed Monroe County operating budget to us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to present an overview of the county executive's proposed budget for 2010. First, I'm going to review the overall budget, and then I'll talk about some things that specifically impact planning and economic development. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Here we can see the overall operating budget. The overall growth is 0.9%. It's less than 1% over 2009. Mandated expenses increased by 0.7%, or $4.5 million. Non-mandated appropriations stay flat from 2009 to 2010. Debt service increases and non-mandated user fee supported increase by $1.1 million. Here, the operating budget is displayed by functional area. Most of the budget, as you can see, is expended on providing human services, nearly 25% of the budget. That goes to social services, aging, youth, and veterans programs. The second greatest area of expense is public safety at 20.7%. This functional area includes the public defender, the district attorney's office, the sheriff, and the public safety department. The third largest expense is for the provision of health services at 15.7%. And then planning is incorporated into the small slice you see there, categorized as other. Along with the county legislature, the county exec's office, finance, law, HR, communications, our IS department, the Board of Elections, and the county clerk. The next slide displays where revenue comes from to fund the operating budget. Most of the revenue, as you can see, almost 40%, comes from property tax, which remains stable for 2010 at $8.99 per thousand of assessed value. This is an increase of $7.4 million, or 2.2%, and that's due to growth. The second largest revenue stream is state aid at $106 million. Of this, most is received by the Department of Human Services, Public Health, and Public Safety. The county's share of the sales tax, as you can see, makes up only 8.5% of our revenue. And federal aid provides 8% of revenue. The lion's share of this goes to DHS to fund its social services programs. I must say, though, that planning does receive some federal aid. For 2010, they expect $782,000 through the Community Block Grant. Next, we see the grant budget. The total grant budget is $173.8 million. This is an increase of 11.5% over 2009. And looking further at the grant budget, the chart demonstrates where that money goes by functional area. Most of the grant budget is, again, attributable to human services. 68% of it goes to human services. That funds the daycare programs, family assistance, safety net, youth programs and services. Health services receives 20% of our grants. This includes child and family health grant, communicable disease prevention, and environmental health grants. Public safety gets 11.7%, and these are grants for the public safety department, the district attorney, the public defender, and the sheriff's office. And Rec and Ed gets a very small portion of the total grants that are obtained by the county, and this is to fund for funding for the zoo, for the horticulture, and their vet programs. Mandated spending in the 2010 budget is at 81%. And if we look at the next slide, it shows how these mandated expenses are sliced up by functional area. The largest driver, once again, of mandated expenses is human services, which is almost 35%. This is, again, social services, aging, youth, and veterans. Public safety accounts for nearly 18% of mandated expenses. Some of these are assigned counsel costs, probation, jail, the Civil Bureau, the district attorney, and the public defender's office. 36% of planning and economic development is mandated, that being its community and workforce development. This is represented in the other area on the pie chart. Other also encompasses the county ledge, the child support enforcement unit of the law department, the Board of Elections, the county clerk, civil service, and real property tax services. Non-mandated expenses are depicted on this slide. The most significant area here, 32.6%, is health services, and that represents Monroe Community Hospital. Public safety is a close number 2 for its 911 emergency communications, Central Police Services, Mutual Aid Fire Bureau, and the Sheriff's Police Bureau and Staff Services. 64% of planning is non-mandated, and again, it's represented in the other slice of the pie. The non-mandated activity are in the areas of planning and economic development. This slide shows the budget by elected official. As you can see, the county clerk continues to return dollars to the county. The revenues are projected to increase over those in 2009 due to an increase in auto license fees because of the state's plate reissuance program. The county legislature remains flat. The DA's office increased slightly due to increases in personnel and benefits. The sheriff's increase is primarily the result of an increase in personnel costs as well as an increase in their debt service costs. And the county executive, her area increases by less than 1%, and that's due to an increase in personnel costs and an increase in our contribution to MCC. The next slide talks specifically about planning and economic development. As you can see, appropriations are reduced for 2010. This is due to eliminating the contribution to MCC's Agricultural and Life Sciences Institute and lowering personnel and benefits costs. Revenues increased by $20,000 in 2010 based on an increase in the federal award to community development, which is expected to total, again, $782,000. Here we can see the major elements that comprise the planning department. The Economic Development Division projects that it will secure 80 new projects for 2009, which will help to create and retain jobs in Monroe County. Community Development awarded 94 grants to homeowners in 2009 for structural, heating, plumbing, electrical, and accessibility improvements. The grants directly benefit the homeowner by providing necessary improvements and impact the entire community by preserving market values of these houses. Additionally, 40 first-time home buyers receive down payment or closing cost assistance as part of a program aimed at allowing more people to achieve the American dream of home ownership. Workforce Development, working in conjunction with Rochester Works, anticipates assisting 8,155 job seekers in finding employment in 2009. 3,796 job seekers will take advantage of tools and training provided at Rochester Works to improve their employability. And additionally, it's projected that 755 youths will have enrolled in employment preparation programming this year. That completes my presentation. I would be happy to take your questions. I'll just go ahead. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the October 26, 2009 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Madam Clerk, referrals for this evening?
Referral 346,
Moved by
authorized.
Legislator Hannah, seconded by Legislator McCann. Any discussions? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, could get a little different or better explanation of what a recovery zone facility bond is or what a recovery zone is in general?
Through the chair, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, $8.3 million was allocated to Monroe County, and this is through the Stimulus Act, in recovery zone bonds that can be used for for-profit projects. Around the state, there were various allocations of recovery zone bonds given to both counties and large cities. The bonds must be used in 2009 and 2010 and can be used for depreciable projects such as construction or equipment for qualified businesses.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, so are recovery zones created by the Federal Stimulus Act, or are they something that were in existence here in Monroe County before that?
Through the chair, we have to designate the county as a recovery zone, so they are being created as a result of the Stimulus Act.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, the entire county then qualifies as a recovery zone, or is it a certain geographical area?
It would be the entire county, and the qualification in this case would be the increase in unemployment from 5.9 in September last year to 8.9 currently.
Oh, I see. So if a large municipality or a county has an increased unemployment, they qualify to become a recovery zone.
Correct.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, the business, I assume it's businesses that then would apply for recovery zone facility bonds in this case. Is that correct?
Through the chair, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Is it businesses that will then apply to your department to receive these bonds?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, will they need to, what qualifications or criteria will they need to meet to be able to receive recovery zone facility bonds?
Through the chair, we will use the standard qualifications that we do on any other project that comes through and review of financial information on the company.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, there's no, they don't need to show that they've been unable to secure financing through more traditional methods to receive these bonds?
Through the chair, they do not need to do that.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, isn't that the intention of the recovery zone bonds? Is it it's just for projects that have more or less been stalled by traditional financing?
No, through the chair, it is access to this funding so that the companies can be creating jobs.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, in the referral, can you explain to me the third paragraph? I know it's sort of standard language when we have bond programs like this. The IRS Code of 1986 talks about how bonds of this nature will be excluded from gross income. Can I just get a description through you, Mr. Chairman, on that?
Mike, do you want to address that?
Yes, as an inducement for investment from the private sector, there's a tax incentive built into the program whereby the interest on these bonds will not be includable in gross income for purposes of the purchaser of the bonds.
Okay, and so that, through you, Mr. Chairman, that applies to the businesses that apply for the bonds?
No, that applies to the purchasers. Typically, the bonds are sold in the private sector to large institutions, for instance, insurance companies, mutual funds. It increases the attractiveness to those investors, thereby lowering the interest rate that these businesses would otherwise have to pay, which in the present economic circumstances will create jobs and allow businesses that could not otherwise go forward with their expansion plans to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Administration.
Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Opposed? Item carried. Next item.
Referral 347, authorize
Moved by
the...
Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Hannah. Any discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask you, through the administration, for a clarification or description, this agreement allowing the Industrial Development Corporation to issue tax-exempt bonds, is this something new that the corporation has not been able to do in the past?
Through the chair, the corporation has not been doing that. It had typically been done through an industrial development agency. And the legislation sunset on that January 31st, 2008.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, I guess that was going to be my question. Is this being done because IDAs throughout New York State are no longer able to do it?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, is there any legal question as to whether or not the IDC can do that opposed to the IDA?
Through the chair, no, it has been examined by our council.
And determined to be
Yes.
sufficient? Okay, that's terrific if you can make it work. I know that's been a big stumbling block for organizations like we heard with Easter Seals throughout the state for the better part of a year now, I believe. So that's terrific, and I look forward to that working in Monroe County. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Legislator Hannah?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, are there any other counties that have designated agencies to issue these bonds, these types of bonds?
Through the chair, locally, I know of Onondaga, Wayne, and Genesee counties have done this.
And have they designated just one agency?
Through the chair, that is correct, they have.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, we heard about Easter seals earlier in Irondequoit. Are there any other agencies that have sought out these funds?
Through the chair, yes. St. Anne's community will be doing an expansion in both Irondequoit and Webster of their elder care, as well as the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired will be expanding their campus on South Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussions? Legislator Esposito.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I may follow up, those projects that you just mentioned, is there any disadvantage to them having to use this new construct as opposed to what would have been the case if IDAs were able to do it as in the past?
Through the chair, no.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, everything else being equal, they're the same for the recipient of the bonds. It's just the pass-through or the organization we're using to do it.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item carried. Next item.
Referral 348, amend the
Moved by
2009.
Legislator Hannah, seconded by Legislator McCann. Any discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had an opportunity to get a briefing on this project in Planning Board. I can't remember, must have been last week. And I just wanted to say a brief thank you to the Department of Environmental Services for coming to present there. But also, I think this is the type of project that we should all be happy to see. I'd like to commend them not only for looking towards sustainable energy practices, but also working in collaboration with other governments, in this case the city. And at the end of the legislation or the referral, it does indicate that if they can move past certain security provisions, they'll open this up to other entities outside of government. So I want to commend DES for continuing to do a good job in this manner. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Then I will ask a question of the administration. How many refueling stations will this make? Is this our first or second?
Through the chair, we have the county has an existing fueling station on Scottsville Road that's a alternative fueling station. But through this funding opportunity, we will be potentially building 2 facilities with potentially a third is a mobile type facility.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Opposed? Item carried. Are there any other matters to come before this committee this evening? Legislator Esposito.
Chairman, are we allowed to ask questions on the budget presentation that Ms. Walsh did?
We are. I opened it up to questions earlier. I thought you waved off, but if you have questions now, that would be wonderful.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't realize you had asked at that time.
Okay.
I can't let her off the hook that easily.
Well, I was wondering, but
Well, thank you. I apologize for having missed that.
no problem.
Through you to the administration, is Ms. Walsh still here? She ducked out, so she thought all right. Well, to whoever might be able to answer the question, there she is. Sorry, Susan, I didn't realize I missed my chance. Through you to the administration, in your presentation, you indicated, and I may have heard you wrong, or I may have my years mixed up, that 36% of the planning and economic development budget is mandated. The budget book lists 41%. I think 36 referred to last year's number. I just wanted to get a clarification.
Which budget were you referring to? Which portion of it?
Well, thank you. On page 209, the Planning and Economic Development Department lists 41% of the budget as being mandated. Your presentation had mentioned 36. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Through the chair, you're correct.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's all right. So the 36 was referring to last year's budget?
That's correct.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, can you explain the reason for the increase?
Through the chair, That's due to some stimulus money that was received.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can you specify?
Through the chair, that's due to $2.5 million in stimulus money that came through for homeless shelters.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, last year, I know I asked this exact same question, and I apologize for not remembering the answer. The $199,000 of service chargebacks in the Planning Services Division is for what?
Through the chair, that's for airport transportation GIS services.
The entire amount?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I note in your presentation you mentioned, and correct me if I had this wrong, you said that the MCC's Agricultural Institute funding will be eliminated. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the $205,000 that specifically goes from planning to MCC towards their Ag Life Science Institute was eliminated in the 2010 budget.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, are they getting that funding from somewhere else, or is that a real cut to them?
Through the chair, as you recall, we increased the contribution to MCC this year by over $1 million. So that I don't know that they're getting that particular appropriation from another source. They will have more appropriations this year than they did last year from the county.
Okay. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, on that topic, does that account for the substantial drop in funding in the Planning Services Division contractual services? Is that where that funding?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, the Economic Development Division, this is a question I also asked last year, has net county support of roughly $164,000. And at that time, I asked why the Comida contribution to the county was remaining flat. And so I guess through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, I'd like to ask that same question this year.
Through the chair, the $260,000 from Comida to the county more than covers the rent, the overhead, and the salaries. And if added up, it adds up to about $166,000. So there is a difference of about $100,000 that Comida does give back to the county to cover services. So that more than covers the services. We would rather see that money used for businesses and expansion. Comida then contributes to Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation, and that goes into programs.
Okay, so I guess that was my next question through you, Mr. Chairman. If the benefit of that money is not to the county, you're saying any surplus dollars that Comida takes in a given year or its fund reserves go then to programs?
Programs and community.
Okay, so that's the point for any funds that Comida accumulates over time, any surpluses they have from year to year.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, Community Development Division estimates or has as one of its goals this year to increase the grant limit on home rehabilitation projects from $7,500 to $10,000. Is that something that's dependent upon expected or anticipated grants, or is that something that we're able to put into effect unilaterally?
We were, through the chair, we were able to put that into effect.
Okay, thank you very much. On page 60 of the budget, it estimates that, through you again, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, pilot payments are estimated to increase a relatively decent amount from last year to this year, 6.3 last year to 7.4 million this year. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have an explanation from the administration as to why there's an increase of over $1 million this year.
Through the chair, that would be just because there are more pilot agreements out there, more projects going on this year for 2010.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, is that indicative of increased economic activity, or is that just the way payments are often structured?
Through the chair, being that there's more programs, it's economic activity, actually.
Good, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask briefly about the stimulus funding in the budget. I know it's not directly related to this committee, but given the stimulus dollars are intended for economic development primarily, I note that in the budget it lists $30 million approximately received this year under miscellaneous revenue, and just over $33 million received last year. I note previous accounts when the stimulus dollars were announced and it was determined how much municipalities and counties were going to receive, it listed $66 million coming to Monroe County. Is that number accurate? And if so, does that mean that there's additional monies coming in somewhere in the future, or is it done retroactively?
Through the chair, that's due to the last quarter of '08, there was an appropriation from the state for stimulus funding.
Okay. That's what I thought. It was done sort of retroactively. And I just, if I may ask, though, the budget for the '08 actual number only lists about $1.5 million, if I remember calling off the top of my head. Through you, Mr. Chairman, is there more that we received, or was that it? I wrote down the page number, but not the actual amount. So I apologize.
Through the chair, can you provide the page number?
Sure. It's page 683.
Through the chair, I apologize for the delay. There was a little bit of confusion over here. The 2008 payment, that last quarter of FMAP money that was received late in the year that did not allow for us, for accounting purposes, to recognize that money. And that's why you don't see it in this book as a 2008 actual. When you see the 2009 actuals, those numbers will represent that last quarter. Now, here's where the clarifying point comes up. For accounting purposes, those dollars were recorded back in as an accrual or a receivable at that point for financial statement purposes. But it's not the way it's reflected here in this book.
Okay, that makes sense, and I appreciate that explanation. Through you, Mr. Chairman, so just to clarify, the 2009 actual will be somewhere in the realm of $36 million at the end of the day?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, and then through you, Mr. Chairman, after this coming budget year, the federal stimulus act that was passed in the past year, we will not receive any more funding. Is that correct?
Through the chair, at the present time, that would be a true statement, yes.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have today, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions on budget? Is there any other matters to come before this committee? There being no further business, the November 16th, 2009 meeting of Planning and Economic Development Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of Planning and Economic Development will be announced. Thank you.